Hello and welcome to this series of lectures and talks with myself and a great friend Penny Hayward. Within these videos, we will be exploring trance mediumship and its development. We'll be discussing different topics on the subject of trance, giving advice and tips to those that are upon this journey of discovery. We hope you enjoy what we discuss together and that it may help you along your journey. And so, welcome, Penny. Today's topic of discussion will be taking your time with the blending. That's something that we've discussed and would like to speak about today.
Yes, it is. I think it's a good topic to start off with Joe. You are Joe, and you didn't quite introduce yourself, so I guess we're assuming everybody knows who you are.
Yes.
Um, and it is great to do this in a slightly less formal way and a more of a discussion. So I think something we've both noticed about people and their blending with the spirit world is everybody seems to be in such a rush and um
Absolutely.
and yeah, and there does seem to be this sort of perception that as soon as you close your eyes, you're in some deep altered state.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think people think you've got to be completely out of the way, straight away, like you said, but it takes time, doesn't it, with that blending?
Does, and I think what's important to maybe remember is I know in my own journey and
Mm,
and and I know I've witnessed your journey as well, which I've been very privileged to do.
mm,
Um, at first, it does take time. At first, we have to have patience because we need to create the right energetic state of being for the right type of blending that we want with the spirit world. And
yes.
we've got other topics we're going to cover.
Mm,
Um, but that blending and that sort of taking our time to really understand our own energy and then the presence of our spirit team.
yeah.
So what is us? What isn't us? I think that takes time because your logical mind is so ready to come
Yeah.
barging in and interfere, isn't it? Especially with
Absolutely.
trance.
Absolutely. I always say to students, I say to them, just try and encourage yourself and be gentle with that logical mind, because at times I think upon this journey with trance mediumship, we tend to find that conscious mind wants to be constantly in control. And so I tend to say to people, just take your time with it, just get to know yourself. And I know I've spoken to you before about the importance of meditation, consciousness
Mm,
itself. I know that's something that you explore an awful lot about with consciousness and
mhm.
understanding ways of how you can calm those thoughts down. So I think people really um, probably want to explore how they can find ways to calm that conscious mind down so that they can then open up, further to that aspect of trance itself.
I think on that point,
Mm.
I'm one of the worst people for a busy mind. I mean, I will wake up
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, mid-deep conversation in something. And so it's not like I wake up and I'm here again. It's like I'm in full-blown conversation on something. And so I think it's important to recognize what type of person are you? What is the traffic like in your conscious logical mind? And then there has to be time and effort and energy put into disciplining that conscious logical mind. Um, I think you said you encourage people to put it aside or something along those
Uh,
lines.
yeah.
Yeah, and I really tell people, especially logical people like myself, and I'm not just logical, I'm also creative, so I've kind of got it all,
Yeah.
you know, rah. Um, but I like to explain to people it's about putting that logical, conscious mind that deals with the human experiences into the role of observation,
Yeah,
observation of the energy, observation of the traffic noise, and recognizing, oh, we don't need this right now. We need to turn that volume down. So there's a great explanation someone once gave, and I really can't remember who it was, but if you think about the conscious mind as like a motorway,
mm,
and during the day in the wakeful human state, it's full of cars, full of traffic, lots of
yeah,
noise, and if our spiritual mind is on one side of the motorway and the spirit world's on the other side of that motorway. There's all this traffic going up and down. Rah! So you can't hear or therefore connect with the spirit world. You can't hear over that noise, and the spirit world finds it hard to cut through. They can't just run across the road of all that traffic. So more often than not, when we're very relaxed and we're falling asleep or just waking up, is when we have insightful moments, is when the spirit world can get something in because there's less traffic in the conscious mind, unless you're me, of course. Um, so it's about meditation, I think, for mediums is a useful tool to discipline the human conscious mind to behave,
yeah,
to sit quietly and observe. That's what I think it's
yeah,
good for. It's not for being Zen and at one moment. It's the discipline of that conscious logical mind. And then you can start to work on the blending of energy and the getting to know your guide and how you're meant to work with them.
yeah. I think, that's what's important, understanding the quiet and the peace. And I think also there's something about obviously the power itself, the power of the soul. I know you talk a lot about the soul, and I also do as well. Um,
Mm,
and for me, it's important that how can we become aware of that soul awareness of us if we can't even quieten that mind down? So,
mm,
this thing with the topic we're talking about today, with that blending and taking your time, there's so many different levels of awareness with this, isn't there? And I think people perhaps need to understand each of those levels and take their time getting to know those. And like you said, that word discipline is just
mm.
such an important part of the journey of a medium.
Yeah, and I think that once we've been on that journey and we go through the various layers and disciplines and blendings and all those beautiful things, we should really see that as a personal journey of exploration, by the way.
Yeah,
But once we've built up that rapport with not just our spirit team or the blended consciousness that works with us, once we understand the energy, once we understand the blending and the level that we're at and the control and giving way to the spirit world, etc., through that process, we're then able to get to that state quicker. So I
yes,
think this is what's important,
mm,
that it's about where are you on that journey. So, of course, you may well experience or witness a developed or experienced medium seemingly closing their eyes, and within not too long, there's the presence of the spirit world and the blending that's there. So it may well be perceived and sensed by those witnessing it quickly. But they've had to go through a process to
Yeah.
build up a trust, to know that it's another mind blending with theirs, that it's not an alter ego, that
Yeah.
it's not their imagination. I mean, how many times have you or I or many others gone, well, I don't know if it's
Yeah.
me or if it's the spirit world?
So I can't believe the amount of times that I probably have had that thought. Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's important to put this into context
Yeah.
that yes, an experienced trance medium may well go into that connection with the spirit world quicker than someone who's just starting out, because how do you know what you don't know? And how do you know you're not connecting with your higher self
Yeah.
or maybe an alter ego, who knows?
Mm.
Um, you know, we have complex personalities and complex minds, and and this is another sort of factor as to why it's important to take time and understand and experience so that you're aware of anything that may not be sitting quite right for you in your mind, in your body,
Mm.
however it's perceived, because otherwise, I guess we're in danger of saying, I become somebody else. Well, it's not quite like that. We are blended
Yes.
with another mind that
Mhm.
assumes a certain amount of control, but we're not completely out of the way, because if we were, we'd be dead.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, one thing I've found is a lot of people say, well, if I'm aware within the trance states, then I'm not in a trance state. If I'm aware I'm being nosy, I can't be in trance. But actually, there is always going to be a part of that awareness that's there that, like you said, becomes the observer of the experience. I've often found when I move into a trance state and one of my helpers comes close to me, there's been experiences where I feel as though I'm still a part of it, but I'm not completely consciously there. I'm observing the experience happening. And so I think it varies, doesn't it? When we look at the altered states,
Mm,
it can go up, it can go down, parts of our awareness can come back, then we can move a little bit more out of the way. And I think it varies. And I think a lot of people tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves of I've got to go deeper, I've got to go deeper, I've got to do it now, I've got to work, I've got to practice.
yeah.
And actually I think it's important to understand those processes of what is coming from you, putting self-development in, understanding that power of your soul and that
Mm,
blending. So then you can start to recognize that if there is a separate intelligence starting to work with you, that's okay. Recognize it's okay to be aware that you may be aware of certain thoughts. It's not about being completely out of the way. um so yeah, that's what
yeah.
I've realized on that journey.
Well, absolutely. And that's
Mm.
part of the getting to know your helpers, your spirit team. That's part of getting to know the shift and change in energy, and that there is something happening and what that feels like to you. So you recognize that,
Yeah.
so that you understand that power and energy that's coming in. And you know, it's important what you said about the up and down, the in and out, because our brainwave activity is exactly that. So
Yeah.
we're never just at one level. If we were, we'd be dead. So, so you know, the fact is, we naturally move up and down different aspects of our brain, and brainwave activity are more or less involved, and if we're not developed properly, if we're too much in a rush, we are in danger of fooling ourselves that we're in some kind of different state of awareness when perhaps we're not, and it's more inspired.
Mm.
rather than a blending of minds.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being inspired,
No.
but we should know. We
Yeah.
should know what state of awareness we're in. And, in the trance state, it takes time to learn how to stay back and just listen to it's okay that you hear, I don't know about you, but I used to get a word round and round and round, and I couldn't think. I
Mm.
couldn't I couldn't take that word and have a thought with it. It went round and round and round until I spat it out. And as much as it may not have made sense, like light, you
Yes.
know, as soon as there is that control from the spirit world to get that word out your mouth, because you're kind of battling that,
Yeah. Go.
like, what's that about? And but once that word comes out, then another word, and suddenly there's a whole sentence, a paragraph that follows. And so it is the art of letting go. It
Yeah.
is the art of um, allowing.
Mhm.
And this takes time. And as soon as somebody asks a question, what's your name of the guide, let's say, and how many times does that
Yeah.
happen? It can instantly bring the conscious mind of the medium back because a question has been asked.
Mm.
And so then that takes a deeper state for the medium to be in so that their own curiosity doesn't go, yeah, what's your name?
Exactly. Totally. I think, that's a really good point, because I think a lot of people think that you should try and encourage the guide to come through, going, welcome, friend, come forward. And actually, we just need to allow the experience to unfold as it will. And us as the sitter can support that experience and just observe. But like you said,
Mm.
if they start asking questions, then that's just going to bring the nosy mind back straight away. I really do.
And I start to teach people to give just a positive affirmation rather than, you
Yeah.
know, hoaxing, like the whole welcome friend thing. To just say, oh, wow, I can feel changes in the energy in the atmosphere, or I see changes on the medium's face.
Yeah.
And that way, it helps the medium to move further and further into that, or relax into that letting go, relax into that submission of the experience, so that the guide can come forward rather than a pressure.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that blending, like you said, the art of letting go, the art of being free
Mm.
within ourselves. I think we need to learn to be a bit more like that, not just in our development, but in life as well, in general, don't we? I think we live in such a busy world. And I think that's part of it, because if you tell someone to just be calm and to go into that stillness and try to blend, it's trying too hard. It's the trying, and it's moving beyond the trying and just the allowing, isn't it? That experience of the allowing. I think it's recognizing that natural power that can be felt once you start to just calm that rational mind down. But like you said, it takes time, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, if you think about it like this, if you've just had a really upsetting message from somebody or conversation, whatever, however that may be upsetting to you, and then somebody says, "Oh, come and look at these bunny rabbits and help me pick one," you know, you're just going to be wanting to talk about your upsetting experience. You're not going to be wanting to worry about fluffy bunnies. And I think it's the same with mediumship. We have to learn the art of turning off our human self, to turn off our upset emotions, or down, because and to sort of accept that we can't do anything about it in that moment, and here we are about to do our development, if it's about our development, or a demonstration if it's a demonstration, and we have to find a way where we put all of our life stuff to one side and get out the way for this
Mm.
experience to happen. And that's not easy. That's it's not easy to be able to um let go when you've got something that's emotionally affecting you.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so this is why I think people have difficulties on their journey as well, because they're they're not really understanding that they have to learn about the energetic mechanics that's going on. Sounds a bit posh, doesn't it? Energetic mechanics, but it's
Totally.
kind of
Yeah.
true.
Yeah,
You
it is.
know, it's not just the power of the soul, it's the power of the mind, the consciousness, you know, moving into the right energetic alignment within your physical, mental, and spiritual aspects, the soul and spirit.
Mm.
So unless you understand that, not really going to appreciate or be able to constructively review afterwards what went well and why, and what didn't go so well and why, you
Yeah.
know, because of a lot of it comes back to where we are in ourselves and
Yes.
our energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I always say to students, take your time when you're moving into that trance state. Don't rush. If you're going to do an exercise, whatever that is with the spirit world, don't rush, but just honor that moment to move in to those aspects, and like you said, you're learning to alter the brain waves, the mind
Mm.
itself. That's going to feel different, and also the energetic self, that power of the soul. For some people, there's some people which don't even recognize their own power of their soul. So when they actually sit and learn to blend with that aspect for the first time, it can be quite overwhelming, quite emotional, I find, for people. So it's almost as though we've got the physical, personal aspect of our unfoldment, and then we've got the spiritual aspect that goes alongside that. And so it's creating that balance between the two, isn't it? It's a really interesting. Um, but I think if we can create that balance and understand that, then that can become quite powerful. But it takes long time, doesn't it?
Well, takes as long as it takes. And something I learned recently from someone who's very academic and knows more about the brain than I do, or other aspects of the brain function than I do. And they said that it takes 6 months to train the brain something new.
Mm,
So if you're thinking that you can just close your eyes and you're in an altered state,
yeah,
then no,
no.
because you haven't done any training of your brain waves, let alone your consciousness and all those other things we've talked about.
Mm,
So if you're doing half an hour or an hour once a week
mm,
versus daily for 6 months, the person who's doing working on that blending daily is going to have better results in 6 months than the person who's doing it once a week, maybe, um, for 6 months.
mhm.
So I think that there's also that to appreciate, that how much time and effort you put into something has along with natural aptitude and
Yeah,
ability
yeah,
and prior experiences, etc., it all kind of comes together, And the thing is, we have these spontaneous experiences to get us on the journey of discovery. So, sure, it might have happened like intensely and wonderfully and magically one day through sheer coincidence that we were in the right energetic states and the spirit world could get in, but that was their opportunity to get us on the journey.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm conscious that we're going to try and keep these conversations
Yes, we're going to keep them quite nice and short, but I think that will be enough for everyone, really, just to absorb. And I'm sure there'll probably be lots of questions and things that people may want to ask about the subject. But I think really, the topic, taking your time with the blending, I think really take your time is the message, isn't it? Don't rush.
Yeah.
Um, and as you say, it takes time, discipline, and dedication. And
Mm,
it really does. I think people need to start recognizing that it does take a lot longer, to sit, to understand yourself. And especially when you start moving into trance, we're going in deeper, aren't we? So we're looking at
mm,
those deeper aspects of ourselves. So um, I think we'll stop it there for today, but that was really lovely.
mm.
Thank you for that wonderful conversation. I'm
Thank you.
sure many people will enjoy watching this. And probably the next one, we'll start talking about the guides, getting to know the guides, and the
Yeah.
importance of guides might be a good topic to start to look at and talk about.
Yeah. And something that I would like to talk about sometime is the power of the breath.
Yes,
Because that
absolutely.
helps the blending and the work that we do. So leave
Exciting.
some comments, folks. Give us some more topics and we'll answer them for you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Bye now. Bye.